Thank you. My colleagues, panelists, captains of industry, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the Chief Executive of GIPC, who until recently was a chairman of one of the strongest sectors in Association of Ghana Industries, has really highlighted the many opportunities that we have in the country. And for that matter, let me say, we welcome our brothers and sisters from the diaspora. I'm really grateful for this opportunity or invitation to share my thoughts on linking investors to local opportunities, the role of the private sector in sustainable growth opportunities. Now, let me say that with all that we've really heard, it sounds to reason that we need to come home. And as the leading private sector business association, our work is to ensure that we create the needed platform for making sure that brothers and sisters from the diaspora will be able to do meaningful business. Now, this summit, as we are all aware, brings Ghanaians abroad together to participate in His Excellency's vision of achieving active participation in the economic development of our country. And the Honorable Minister has left, but I really share in his idea of working on a diaspora bond, because I'm going to quote from a paper titled Diaspora Bonds, Some Lessons for African Countries. And here he says that Africa could tap into an estimated $53 billion, being the savings of an estimated 140 million Africans living outside the continent. And we see this as a good opportunity to be able to work with our brothers who are out there. But let me also say that we've heard statistics to the effect that about probably 4 million Ghanaians live abroad. And if we don't welcome you home, then the countries of your abode will then take all the various talents and then resources, wealth that you have really created. Now, I want to incite a debate by saying that I disagree with the notion that the private sector is the engine of economic growth. We are always told that the private sector is the engine of growth. But rather, I believe that the public sector is the engine of economic growth. And the private sector is really the driver of that engine. Looking at that, without a good engine, without a good private sector, now the driver cannot play an effective and efficient role, no matter how good that driver may be. Why am I saying this? Even though the private sector is a key driver of economic growth, it requires a very robust relationship with government in a constructive framework of mutual cooperation. So as we listen to the finance minister, we are now seeing an economy with that level of stability required so that businesses can thrive. To make some worth in the diaspora and remit family and friends, as we heard this morning from His Excellency, is a good idea. But beyond the usual remittances, I believe Ghanaians in the diaspora can promote trade, influence investment decisions, and look forward to bringing into the economy foreign direct investments so that we can create businesses. Now look at knowledge transfer skills so that we don't need to really reinvent the wheel, but more importantly, also look at areas of public-private partnerships. Now, let me quickly add that as Ghanaian citizens who have lived abroad for considerably long time. You may have acquired knowledge, expertise, information, and resources to invest and help develop our country. Now, we in Association of Ghana Industries, the leading private sector voice in the country, we are so much encouraged by your interest in coming back home to set up businesses. So we welcome you. And we all will even be more excited if the area of your business interest is within the industrial sector, especially in manufacturing. At the moment, if we follow manufacturing's contribution to GDP, it's been consistently declining. And hence, that is so worrying. But then we also agree and we know that it's only manufacturing or industry that can offer the needed jobs that our Thimi youth who come out of schools need. So in as much as we look at areas of investment, I would very shortly highlight some key areas that we can focus on. But we'll be very much happy if our areas of investment will be in manufacturing or will be in industry in general. Now, as you may be aware, the current government's focus has been industrial development, and all initiatives of the government gives credence to this. So, Association of Ghana Industries is indeed partnering government to achieve these noble objectives. But I guess, as people coming from abroad, you may be wondering which specific areas of business you should be venturing into. And Yofi has highlighted many of them, but let me add these few areas which have become areas of so much interest. Now, agribusiness value chain, which offers numerous opportunities, and I will mention a few of them. Even if you are looking at the government's One District, One Factory initiative, targeting largely the agro-processing sector, we have various types of fruit and vegetable processing line. We also have various types of dairy products. We were in China a couple of weeks ago, and I'll mention a few things that happened there. And you see that we are looking at products that would have export markets in China. And here, one of these products is cassava processing line, which would be able, which can be used for alcohol, starch, glue, and has so much demand in Nigeria, in China, and so on and so forth. What about soya bean processing line, oil palm processing line, cashew processing line? All these are in the area of agribusiness chain. And we talk about salt production, agricultural and livestock products line, just to mention a few. But to give an example, when you have, let's say, citrus processing project, you can have orange juice, we know, fruit oil, animal feed, fruit concentrates. Hence, each of these products areas have several other multiple uses. Now, in establishing these processing lines, you also need a good raw material base. And one of our biggest challenges has been the fact that our country has become import dependent, and virtually almost everything is being imported in the country. So as we look at industrialization, as we look at areas of investment, we should also be mindful of the fact that our raw materials should come from here. So then we are looking at import substitution. That is why we are really re-emphasizing the need to look at the agribusiness chain. Now, therefore, growing these crops to feed the factories also presents serious business opportunities. In fact, like I said a short while ago, our trip to China clearly indicated that the Chinese demand for these products, as outlined earlier, is high. And therefore, market per se will not be a problem at all. Once you are going into investment, or you want to really invest in a particular area, what the country needs now is products that can easily be exported. We've had challenges of unstable currency because we have a very small or very thin export base as a country. So if we can take advantage of not only the 28 million people in our country, but we'll look generally at the sub-region, and even beyond the sub-region, I mean the sub-region of about 350 million people, and beyond that, then we are really building a very sustainable business. I was in Berlin last week speaking at a German Day of Industry, and they were asking questions like, why do we need to come and invest in Africa? And I said, look, this is the time, because we have all the natural resources, we have the human resources, we have a huge market. Now, even beyond the sub-region, we are also looking at the continent where just by the end of the year, it will become one big market. Hence, there are so many opportunities which I think we need to take the opportunities before we have our friends from Europe coming in. What about transportation and logistics? Now, packaging industries, warehousing, which I think you forgot to mention one constituency, one warehouse. So I believe that that's also opportunity. And warehousing or refrigerating facilities are all important, part of the chain that presents great opportunities. Now, in the industrial areas, in particular, industrial salt for petroleum industry, integrated aluminum chain, we're talking about bauxite, and we want to see a value chain from bauxite to alumina to aluminum, then to all the downlines. And I believe that if you take only from aluminum to the downlines, there are over 350 companies that are working there. We have teak plantation for electricity pulp, garments production for the American market through Agua, which has been extended, electrical and electronic assembly plants, building materials production, again, power, as was mentioned a short while ago. At the moment, industry is really buying power at 21 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, if we are competing with goods or products that are coming from countries where they buy power at 5 cents per kilowatt hour, definitely you are out of competition. So we're looking at a situation where we can have investment in that area, and it's possible that we can have that needed investment such that the price of power per kilowatt hour can drop to probably below 10 cents per kilowatt hour. So please bring the money, let us invest there. Another area that we can also see business opportunities now in the country are in the areas of ICT and oil, which we've been told already. Now, let me mention some few challenges that we face as industrialists or people who are really on the ground. Now, a key challenge confronting most Ghanaian businesses is access to medium to long-term capital. I've always said that, and a survey that was done not too long ago indicated that over 85% of all credit in the country are all short-term, not exceeding 12 months. So it becomes very difficult to really borrow at this current interest rate of about 35%, and then you use that one to set up a factory or retool or expand. So we are looking for medium to long-term capital, but as people coming from abroad, we believe that you can use your expertise, networks, and experience to raise needed initial capital to establish such businesses here. Or we can go into partnership using equity. Now, business partnerships among ourselves are also key. Now, looking at what we can leverage on. Now, as the main industrial association in Ghana, we are really prepared to work with you to make your businesses succeed. So even if you are new, you've not really started something here, we are very much prepared to show you the ropes. We have been, like I said, partnering government in diverse ways to improve the business environment to ensure that businesses succeed in the country. As you may be aware, and as I mentioned a short while ago, a couple of weeks ago, a strong business delegation joined a high-powered government delegation led by His Excellency the Vice President to China. Now, during this trip, an MOU was signed with China National Building Materials and Equipment and Import and Export Corporation for a $2 billion facility to support local industries. And we invite you, if our AGI signed this MOU, so we are inviting you to also tap into such facility and then be able to set up here in Ghana. We have no doubt now, we have no doubt that you take full advantage of such opportunities which are here. Now, for all these to succeed, we need to have a conducive and competitive business environment that encourages investment. I am happy to say that the latest AGI Business Barometer indicator, and what we have been doing is that on quarterly basis, AGI will carry out survey amongst captains of industries, chief executives, to let them gauge the mood of business confidence in the economy. And they will tell us whether businesses are doing well or they are not doing well. But in the past 2 quarters, what we have seen is that the level of business confidence in the economy has shown improvement, and hence we need to sustain that. We were also told a short while ago that the latest Ease of Doing Business report ranked Ghana 108. It's not good, but we've made progress from the previous 111. Now we are ahead of sub-regional countries like Mali, Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, Senegal, Nigeria, Liberia, and so on and so forth. So we are indeed the gateway to West Africa. Now this indicates that Ghana has potential to further improve its ranking in the ease of doing business. On the occasions where we have received business delegations, we have hosted, AGI has hosted business delegations from India, Europe, China, and other countries. Ghanaian investors from the diaspora have been conspicuously missing from such delegations, and maybe for the simple reason that already you have contact here, you know about the risk profile and other opportunities. Now, you also have better understanding and assessment of the business risk in the country, which makes them less risk averse to these opportunities. Thank you. What we're looking forward to, in conclusion, I'm told my time is here. I think you are not being fair to me. Thank you. That's on the lighter side. Now, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I believe one of the expected outcomes of this summit is to have a more structured arrangement that links Ghanaians in the diaspora to investments in the country. Now, if such arrangements are well structured, then we will be in the position to evaluate and deepen such initiatives. Let me say that members of the diasporan community, I wish to assure of AGI's readiness to partner with you and provide the necessary support and linkages to help you succeed in Ghana. We are a strong association covering over 23 sectors in the economy, virtually everywhere in the economy. We have over 1,500 corporate members. In fact, you can talk about all the blue chip companies like Unilever, Tallow, Nestle. All of them are members of AGI. We, of course, have also the medium-scale enterprises or indigenous businesses, the small ones as well. With our extensive network of businesses, we are well positioned to help you fully integrate into the Ghanaian business arena when established. You can count on us for our support. So once again, let me say a very big akwaba to you, and please come and let us all build Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. James Asare J, President of the Association of the Ghana Industries. We'll now hear from the Regional Director for Ecom Agro-Industrial Corporation in the African region. He's also the Global Director responsible for new commodities and businesses, our platinum sponsor. Please put your hands together for Mr. Rahul Gopinath, Ecom Agro-Trade Limited.
Honorable Minister, distinguished guests, friends, a very good afternoon to you. After the inspiring and thought-provoking address by His Excellency President Nana Akufo-Addo and my friend and distinguished diasporan Minister of Finance, Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta, I feel humbled to be among the first speakers to address this very august gathering of go-getters and super-achievers. Go-getters and super-achievers is how I describe the Ghanaian diaspora who have come back to their motherland for their homecoming event. As the last speaker standing before you and a coffee, Great. As the last speaker standing before you and a coffee break, I have to assure you that I belong to the Elizabeth Taylor School of Public Speaking. As Elizabeth Taylor told her 7 husbands from 8 marriages, I shall leave you soon. Before I speak on creating entrepreneurship on this momentous occasion, let me take the opportunity to briefly speak on Ecom. Ecom is a 160-year-old company. It operates in what we call the 3 Cinderellas: cocoa, coffee, and cotton. We have been a 7-generation family-owned company, and the supply chain which you see between the farmer and the end chocolate maker, coffee roaster, is where we participate in. Our unique value proposition is a sustainability program which we work with various clients and work with farmers on the ground. The graph's not that clear, but what it shows is a diversified trade flow. It's got lines all over the place going from Southern America, Latin America, Northern America, Europe, Asia, all the way down to Africa. And our business is about being the brand behind the brands. If you have ever had Starbucks coffee or you have had Lindt chocolate, you have had an Ecom product. Our main customers are on the slide on top of the presentation. Ecom has been present in Ghana for the last probably 17 years. It acquired Amajaro in 2013. 17 years of being participating in the Ghanaian growth story. It's the largest counterparty to Ghana Cocoa Board, the largest client and partner of Ghanaian cocoa processing industry. The farmer outreach programs, which we do, reach almost 150,000 farmers in all the 10 regions. And we also work with institutions like Cocoa Research Institute Ghana, Forest Research Institute Ghana, to provide research activities and capacity building on research. But let's talk about e-com and entrepreneurship, which is a topic which I've been given to talk about entrepreneurship. That dapper gentleman is Jose Esteve. You can see from his stylish sideburns that was the style of the day in 1850. As the fifth child of a 6-member family, he had neither land nor property to his name. So his elder brothers decided to become priests and teachers. He decided to go to Mexico to start a trading operation in cotton. Interestingly, in the early 1850s, Jose Esteve started a company called the Esteve Roosevelt Trading Company with Elliott Roosevelt, who is the brother of Teddy Roosevelt and the father of Eleanor Roosevelt. That company has been in existence for 100 years, and in 1950, it actually closed down. Esteve Company is what today is known as e-com. That's a story of an entrepreneur. And this entrepreneurship spirit has gone down even in Ghana. Today, we operate in Ghana with 350 employees. But we work on the ground through a franchise system. We provide franchises to entrepreneurs who actually carry e-com's name and work in the districts. Those are 150 farmer development centers which sells products and services to farmers and buys the commodities from them. These franchisees work with 5,000 micro-franchisees on the ground in every single village across Ghana. Again, entrepreneurs being created. Interestingly, each franchisee at the district level employs between 6 and 8 employees. So overall, e-com has a direct employment of almost 7,000 people with whom they work on the ground, pay insurance, pay pension for these employees. And through this network, we reach 150,000 farmers. We buy the commodities, and we sell product and services and knowledge to these farmers, providing the farmer an experience. But who is an entrepreneur? There's a very big question. A lot of you would say, that gentleman is an entrepreneur. He's wearing a nice jacket, sitting in a coffee shop, probably using a computer, and working hard. And he is the typical example of an entrepreneur. For the new generation guys, those 2 brothers are entrepreneurs. They're actually Nigerian startup. And today, a startup environment is all about Bermudas, T-shirts, and 2 laptops, usually Apple. But would you say any of these guys are entrepreneurs? There are 5 gentlemen on this photograph. Let me introduce you to Collins Adu, 35 years old, based in Tepa in the Ashanti region. He is a member of the e-com sustainability farmer program all the way from 2013. He has got a 5-hectare cocoa farm plantation, 1.5 hectares cabbage plantation, which he started after he went through business skills training with us. He earns 20,000 Ghana cedis from his cocoa plantation and 25,000 Ghana cedis from his cabbage plantation over a 4-month period. That is middle income. He employs those 4 gentlemen and 2 women who did not want to come on the photograph behind him. 6 employees. In the US, you would probably get a PR. So entrepreneurship is all about finding the right problem and finding a business solution to the problem. And as long as a business solution exists, there is entrepreneurship. A lot of us talked about problems today to the minister. I see every problem as an opportunity to start a business. So if we as a country have a lot of problems, it also means there are lots of opportunities for all of us to participate in. Let's talk about the Ghanaian entrepreneur. The initial entrepreneurs were built on the commodity boom. Cheap money available from the US and Europe resulted in high commodity prices. Oil, cocoa prices went up, and a lot of the old money today in Ghana is from the initial commodity boom. Then you had governments expanding in the fiscal space, getting into public procurement. A lot of businesses participate in supporting these governments. The challenge in this is it increases corruption and other issues with it. And the final initial entrepreneurs who came into Africa, to Ghana, to actually start off entrepreneurship, targeted the urban, low-hanging consumer base. The African urban consumer is developing and is increasingly growing richer. And a lot of companies today target that race. But today's entrepreneur is quite different. He targets knowledge. Good example is two companies, Esoko and Chalkboard Education. Esoko provides farmers access to prices of products across the world. So if you are, say, a yam farmer sitting in Techiman and you want to know what is the yam price in Sunyani, you probably will get to know through Esoko. Chalkboard Education provides access to education to people who cannot go to schools or colleges on their mobile phones. The other type of entrepreneur looks at needs and comforts. All of us have used Jumia to buy a cell phone. Jumia allows us to manage our comfort much more easier. Jumia is the Amazon of Africa. You've got entrepreneurs who participate in accessibility. Alibaba.com is something which everybody uses. In the olden days, everybody had to travel probably a 24-hour flight to China, find a Chinese supplier to import a product, many times losing his money in the process. Today, we go on Alibaba.com, find a gold standard supplier, and import through him. Iroko TV, which is a Nigerian startup, today it's a bigger business, started off by providing access to Nigerian movies, Nollywood movies. And finally, efficiency. I don't think a lot of you are as old as I am in Ghana, but if you remember, CityLink used to be the first Ghanaian run after Amtrak, was the first Ghanaian run private airline, and it provided an efficiency. It saw the market in connecting Accra to Kumasi. Mekasa.com is a platform which provides real estate. So today's entrepreneur is quite different. It's the way you cut the problem. What does a Ghanaian entrepreneur really need? He needs those four things: knowledge, mentorship, capital, and a suitable government policy. So my first question to this gathering is knowledge. Could business schools, which today train a lot of you have gone to many of these schools, Legon, KNUST, UCC, JIMPA, could it actually reach out beyond the urban centers? Could it go down to the western region areas? Could it go down to the northern region areas, reach out to those people? Because they have ideas and they don't know how to go about converting the ideas into business case. Could successful African businesses and entrepreneurs mentor and support young Ghanaian entrepreneurs? This is probably a challenge even to the Ghana Diaspora Forum, that could they become a place where mentorship could be done? Could they actually act as a channel where successful individuals like you, like people here, could actually mentor young Ghanaians to take over businesses? Capital is always an issue. A lot of you are bankers out here. Banks love to bank a balance sheet like mine, but they wouldn't want to bank a young entrepreneur's balance sheet. And the challenge is they want 3 years of balance sheet and P&L. Could banks participate with angel investors in providing capital towards young startups? Finally, government policy. Could government policy be startup friendly, particularly for the Ghanaian and diasporan? A lot of government policy, including the GIPC's policies, are about attracting FDI, but it doesn't differentiate many times in the color of the FDI. But could Ghanaians and diasporans who want to come back have a special method of reaching out? Could they have lower levels of hoops to jump compared to an international investor? That is the way to get diasporans to invest back in Ghana. Finally, I want to talk about the role of the diaspora. There are some numbers out here. A lot of it has been talked about, 2016 numbers. The Ghana Revenue Authority's revenue collection was 183 million Ghana cedis. The FDI in 2016 was 180 projects contributing $2.4 billion. But 75% of the FDI were from wholly foreign-owned entities, not from the diaspora. But interestingly, the diaspora during the same period invested or remitted 8.7 billion Ghana cedis, 2 billion USD. A lot of you who invested the 2 billion USD in the country are sitting here. A lot of you know where you invested it. You invested in land, you invested in houses. Usually, assets which just sit there, they don't create jobs beyond the initial job creation. Secondly, they've been invested in expenditure, in increasing the household earnings. Could we tap into that 2 billion USD? Imagine the amount of entrepreneurship which could be developed if part of the 2 billion USD came in to create businesses in the country. Finally, I can't put it more elegantly than the NPP election manifesto, where it says very clearly that the only way of creating a sustainable economy in Ghana is to be able to be most business friendly, which will help create jobs and prosperity for all Ghanaians. So I challenge you, the audience, to think through, why are you waiting all these years to invest back in Ghana? Thank you.
Many thanks, Rahul Gopinath, Ecom Agro Trade Limited, our platinum sponsor. Our last speaker for this session is a former MD of Airtel. He's a tech consultant to Nubuke Investments. Please, let's welcome Mr. Philip Sowa.
Okay.
That's the first picture.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, good evening. I'll try and make this quick because I know time is fast spent. And first of all, I'd like to apologize for Tutu Ajari not being here. He's scheduled to be the speaker. Unfortunately, he was called to London yesterday, so he left last night and asked me to present this for him. My name is Philip Sowa. I used to be the managing director for Airtel, and now I'm a technology consultant with Nubuke. Also, I'm a diasporan. I've been back fully maybe about 12 years now, so been quite well entrenched. Okay, so quickly, we'll do a couple of things. One is, let's get some definitions straight. Who are we talking about when we talk about diasporans? How many are they? Who are they? Where are they? And what do they do? And more importantly, we focus on a bit on the remittances that Rahul spoke about, because that is a source of revenue that we need to discuss and see how we can put it to use in the country. Okay. Now, for the most part, when we talk about diasporans, we're talking about Ghanaians who are, first generation, second generation, even third generation out in Europe, the US, Asia, Latin America, who want to do something for Ghana, and sometimes you don't know what to do. And I think that's what this entire couple of days is supposed to do for you, is show you some of the ways that you can help. It could be financial, or as the previous speaker said, it could be mentorship. There's so many ways the diaspora can help. But to do that, we got to know a little bit more about the diaspora. And I think that's the key thing about having the Office of the Diaspora Relations, because everybody knows somebody out there, but there's no comprehensive database that tells us who's where, what they're doing, how they can help, or what skills they have. And I think that is very, very key
to move forward. Now, while we have diasporans, this is a little aside. My daughter and her friends, there's something called ahasporans. So when you have a time, Google ahasporans.com. And these are all our kids who've gone out to Europe, the US, studied. Some of them worked a little bit and are back in Ghana. And they actually have found a way to get together and mentor each other and help each other survive the Ghanaian experience. So we have the ahasporans who are also around. Now, how many people are in diaspora? They're kind of, as I said, we don't have the right data, but these are the best guesstimates. We have 2 million who are what we call the near diasporans. So Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Togo, Liberia, and the surrounding areas. And then we have another 2 million who are the far afield diasporans, who are in Europe, the US, Asia, Middle East. Now, the key demographic I think we're looking at is the far ahasporans, because the near ahasporans come back enough times. The far ones are key because typically they are also higher educated, higher earning. They've acquired really key skills that the country can use, and we need to find a way to harness this. And I think that's the challenge we're trying to address. Most of the migration happened in the mid-'80s, when we all know the struggles that the country was going through. I left during the early '80s. I'm quite sure a number of you did also. And so we're looking to see what you can do. But now the reason is, why do we care so much about the diasporans? And as with business, everything boils back down to money. Officially, the diasporans send back $2 billion a year. But as this conference has been going on, I've been writing on my notes. First, somebody said 3 billion, so I wrote 2 billion or 3 billion. Then somebody said 4 billion, so I wrote 3 billion or 2 or 3 or 4 billion. Then I think somebody said 5 billion, so now it tells us we don't know. That's the truth. And I think that is the big issue, is we don't know. So what do we do? Right? To be able to really help, channel these funds, we need to know who's sending it, how they're sending it, why they're sending it, so that we can help channel the funds to the right, projects. Now, unless you understand the reason why, you cannot put effective programs into helping to support the diasporans. We need to formalize the flows so that we can measure them. Anything you measure, you can improve. Right? You don't measure, you can't improve it. So we need to understand what it is, and we need to be able to measure it. So how do we do this? First of all, actually by a show of hands, how many of you have registered with the Ghanaian embassies or high commissions in your countries? Yes, it's very few. When I was in the US, I didn't register the US embassy, the Ghanaian embassy in the US either. But it is key. And I think one of the takeouts that we need to ensure that both the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Office of the Diaspora Relations is that a proper database is put in place with all the right fields that gets who we are, or who you are. I'm no longer a diasporan. Who you are, what your expertise is, what you do. Just so that we can harness this. Because if even once a year, and I think when we have forums like this, we need to break up into industry groups or areas of interest, because then you can dig deeper into aspects of the economy that you can help. It's amazing, what the diasporans are doing everywhere else, and yet we don't know. Sometimes you see it on the TV and you're like, oh wow, there's a Ghanaian doing this. I think it is imperative that we have a database. Everybody who wants to help registers, so we know where people are and what they do or what they can help. Now, I think one of the key reasons, oops, one second. And I'm going on the premise that the key reasons all of you are here is because everybody wants to see how they can help Ghana, how they can give back. Because We've all been here, some educated here, gone overseas, been successful. Now you're ready to come back and saying, what do I do, or how can I help do what I want to do? And that's what we hope to get out of here. Now, Nubuka being a financial services organization, primarily, we do a lot of things, but this was Tutu's presentation, so he talks about finance. Is that there are a number of things that can happen. And one, I think, Honorable Ken spoke about the diaspora bond. And the key thing is that if we can harness these funds, we can then get Ghanaians to participate in a number of projects. I know, for example, Ghana Airport Authority was raising funds for the Terminal 3, which is quite far along, almost done. Wouldn't it be great if Ghanaians were allowed to invest in that, instead of us going cup in hand to all the various financial institutions to look for money? So the key thing is, if we can formalize vehicles that you know that if I put my money in this vehicle, I'm guaranteed a 6% return. I mean, the dollar in the bank is, you're lucky if you get 2%. If you get 6%, that's more than three times what you'd get if you put your money in the bank. So the key thing, I think, is that once we understand who's sending the money, where they're sending it from, we can then create financial instruments that people now can put their money into. Because I know as the previous speaker said, everybody puts their money into apartments and houses, and then they sit empty for months. Or you get a relative sitting there who doesn't pay any rent, which doesn't help. But I mean, if you had somewhere else to put the money, I think that is where you can also help drive the economy and make a return on your investment. Another thing which is kind of thinking out of the box, but I was wondering if, a data bank or a Gold Coast Securities could create a mutual fund that you could put some of your 401k money into. For those from the US, there's a retirement fund called the 401k plan. Wouldn't it be nice if, as one of the options on your 401k is to be able to put money to a Ghanaian facility where you know the money is going to a project in Ghana, you're going to get decent returns. So you're doing two things, helping the country and ensuring a successful retirement. These are some of the things that we're looking at and saying, we as Ghanaians, both in the diaspora and here, should be looking at doing. And I think I'm going to cut off my presentation right here. But I think the whole idea is that we need to have more vehicles available to the diasporans who are sending the monies so that they can put them in and help drive the economy instead of putting it into static investments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's time for the question and answers. And it's a Q&A session. We'll take 6 questions, 2 from each aisle. The ladies are still there. Just step forward as quick as you can. I'll take only 6 questions to any of the speakers, whether it's Philip Sowell or Mr. Asire J, or Mr. Yofi Grant, or Mr. Rahul Gopinath. So time is open for questions. First question. Yes, please put the microphone on.
Hello.
Yes, your name and your question. Brief question to whoever you want to ask.
I'm Dr. Nuyama. Dr. Nuyama, a returnee. I came home about 7 years ago. I'm now a lecturer in one of the universities, and fortunately, I had the opportunity of serving in the transition team of the government. I have 2 questions, quick ones. And number 1 is to to Yofi. Yofi, is it possible for Ghanaians in the diaspora to pay their duties in any of the missions abroad before they come here? Because that has been the problem. The import duties, no, the port duties that we pay at the Tema Harbor. Can you create any opportunities for us to pay in the missions abroad before we come here, so that we come only with the receipt and pick our cars and other things? Secondly, it seems we are importing everything, and we are talking about a small-scale manufacturing thing. Is it possible also to ask the universities to even come out with machines, because even now, machines that we're going to use, we have to import them. Is there any possibility for us to have machines to do the small-scale investment? Thank you very much.
I'll take 2 more questions and then we'll get some responses. Yes, sir.
Okay. Actually, on a different note, this event has only been planned for at least 2 months. And you would have thought all the ministers and all the stakeholders would have been here wanting to listen to us, to understand what our problems are, so that we will have a dialogue, so that we could find out ways to integrate into the system. But where is everybody? Nobody's here. And don't start answering the question, because it's not to you. The reason why we are here is not to listen to stuff that we could read on your websites. The reason that we are here is for us to put questions to you of our challenges that we have in our respective countries, so that you can help us in how we can integrate into the system. Yet everybody comes in and does a nice presentation and tells us what your mandate is. We know what your mandate is. We need to know how we get into the system. And nobody is here listening to us. And that is a huge problem for us. Listen, you've gone up and you talked about our monies that we bring here through remittances is more than the entire Ghana pays in taxes. And let me know, because I know the numbers and you could check. So if we can bring in enough monies than the entire Ghana pays in taxes, you would have thought that these concerned ministers will be here listening to us, to work with us in finding out how they can take money from us. They're not here. You guys got to be kidding me or what, right? Now, let me tell you something. Hold up.
Please wrap up. We've got a few more questions.
Just bear with me.
Please get to your point, sir.
No. I'm getting to my point, and this is exactly the problem. The problem is you don't want to hear us when we have something important to talk about. Don't rush us because we flew in from over 3,000 miles away. We have paid dear to be here. So please do not rush us. If you don't have the time to sit with us, don't put this meeting together.
You've made your point, sir. Thank you very much. Next question.
Hi, my name is Raphael Eni Ewuku. One is a suggestion to those who are in charge. I was actually going to say the same thing about what he just said. I used to live in London. I'm back here. I'm into the real estate space, real estate agent, broker. You realize that, like, the numbers came out. I think even the numbers probably just been massaged, but they're not right. The housing deficit in Ghana is massive. If you go out at night, Abu Blushi, you see all these people sleeping around. There's so many things we can do to ease the housing deficit. What I am suggesting is, rather than concentrating in mainland Accra, roads should be opened up. Someone should be able to live in Somenya or way past Somenya and should be able to come to Accra, do their business on a highway, and then go back. If you travel outside the country, people work, like in Ghana, it would probably be like 2 or 3 or 4 hours drive, but they can make it, because it's a highway, 35 minutes, 40 minutes, they're at work. These are the kind of projects that should be done so that, you know, when roads go to places, the places open up. Otherwise, you are traveling along Accra Kumasi Road or somewhere else, and then all you see is bushes. Those are lands that can be used. Accra doesn't have to be crowded. That is one. And then two, when you travel, when I travel, I meet people. I travel economy. I'm not a rich man. I meet people on economy. You see them in the airports. You have chats. People who are like country directors of NGOs, World Vision, and the rest of them, regional directors, the whole of West Africa. They're flying economy. But you see our ministers, you see the CEOs of our state enterprises flying business classes. And this gentleman I met one of the, I don't want to mention the organization. Big man, as the Ghanaian parlance would say. And he says to me, listen, I have people in the UK contributing £5, £1, £2, £10, direct debit from their account. I mean, for charity, I can't afford, it is company policy, or policy of the NGO. You can't afford, as somebody that has been put in a place of trust, to fly first class or business class. So some of these things have to be addressed, I believe. Mr. Grant, I mean, I'm looking at you especially because I think the rest here are not in government or have nothing to do with government. So you can pass it on. And I believe if you do and you help push it, you will be remembered for something. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll get some responses. Mr. Yofi Grant, some responses. There was a question about whether it's possible to pay duty in the missions so that you just arrive with your receipt.
Yes, the issue of duties, I think that's a very innovative suggestion, and we'll push it up for discussion and see. But usually duties, etc., are cross borders. So it's when you cross the border, they charge you the duty when the goods have crossed the border. But we will look at it and see how best we can make it an actuality, if it makes things efficient. So at the end of the day, all you want is speed and efficiency. So we will take it up.
There was a question on whether simple machines can be made because we're importing everything.
Of course. I mean, that is the intention, to also enable local manufacturing capacity and capability. There have been, I mean, I can tell you, I went to Turkey, a company offered $150 million to support agric machinery manufacturing in Ghana. But, I mean, I like to be a bit real as well. Why aren't we manufacturing here? Why aren't we manufacturing equipment here now? I mean, I ask you that question. Why aren't we doing it? If we could do it, why aren't we doing it? So maybe we need to develop the capacity and the capability and bring it here. And that's one of the benefits of foreign investment. Because usually when it comes, it also brings with technical know-how and skills that we learn, acquire, and use. Many countries have done that. I mean, reading about Singapore, there was a time Lee Kuan Yew admitted that his country didn't have the capacity that it needed. So he deliberately went out to bring foreign investment and told his people, we are going to study what these people do, we are going to learn what they do, and then within 10 years we'll be doing it ourselves. The same principle has been used in China, has been used in many other countries. And so there is a win-win benefit out of attracting investment and then having technology transfer that we can use. So that is what it is. But the intention to manufacture our own equipment, of course, is there. We don't have steel mills, we don't have aluminum mills yet, we don't have other metals manufactured here which we can use for equipment. So once we get those, then we need to move the step further and get into the conversion space. Okay.
Okay, I don't know whether you can answer this question. Where are the ministers? Gentleman wants to know where the ministers are.
I don't know. I don't know whether I need to even answer that question. I mean, because that's his feeling. He feels ministers should be here. But what I can tell you is there are a lot of people in the diaspora who have been employed by government. It's not like they don't know the problems. They are just like you. They know the problems, and they've offered themselves to solve. That's why they're in government. And so, as for knowing the problems, I'm sure everybody here can articulate 100 problems. But for us, the real issue is how do we engage together to solve the problems? For me at GIPC, a Ghanaian in Ghana is the same as a Ghanaian sitting in Tottenham, or sitting in Zurich, or sitting in Berlin, or sitting in New York. And if I can use his or his expertise to grow, so be it. I am not sure whether bringing ministers here to engage them in a little powwow necessarily might be the best template for all of us, else we could be here the whole day. But there are enough people here on the committee. There's an office in the president's, the Diaspora Relations Office, that is going to collect all the views here, going to collect them and articulate. They are all diaspora people. They are not people who are here, locals, as you might call them. They are diaspora people. So, yes, it might be a legitimate question that you should stop government and put all the ministers to sit here for a day to answer questions. It might not necessarily be the best use of time. And I know you're saying that I don't understand the question. I do. What you have, there are 2 more days. There are going to be representatives from various agencies who are going to be here. But I'll tell you that the committee and those on the diaspora committee and the office are here collating views and ideas. And they will articulate them through the proper channels. So don't lose hope or don't lose heart. That engagement will happen.
A third question, the roads that are leading outside of Accra. There was a gentleman who said it appears all the roads are in the Accra area. How about going out so people can live in, say, Ho or Somanya and come to work here?
Oh, there's a road to Ho. I can't imagine he thinks there's no road to Ho. There is a road to Ho. Maybe it might not be the best. And I did indicate that there's a huge program, integrative transportation rehabilitation project that the government is putting in place, which will integrate railway, road, sea, and air. And it is comprehensive. It's taking into account plans that have been drawn up over the past 20, 30 years, coalescing them all into one comprehensive document to make sure that every part of the country is accessible. Because if you do the one district, one factory, and you don't have good transport linkages, it doesn't mean anything. So that program is on track. I can assure you that.
Thank you, sir. I'll take 3 more questions from here. First one.
My name is Yao Fori Amanfo. I used to live in the United States, and I've been here for the past 3 years. And I think that you've touched on some of the questions that I'm going to ask. It looks as if a lot of people that come here get frustrated by the systems. You know, when you are overseas and Ghanaian officials come there, they always invite you, come home, come home, come home. And then you come home to try to start a business or do stuff. And the frustrations that people go home, I personally have friends who came, you know, and they've gone back because they get so frustrated with the system, nothing seems to work. And I think at a forum like this, as my brother said earlier, if we can listen and actually try to help solve some of the frustrations that we have, it will help all of us. My experience is, you know, you go to places and see the way they're doing things, and you know there are better ways to do it, okay? But people will keep telling you, this is the way we always do it, and we can't change. And even if you have good ideas, nobody wants to listen to those good ideas. So you get to a point where you're like, okay, now what do I do? My wife and I came here and we wanted to set up a physio clinic, a physiotherapy clinic. We sent equipment from the United States. We have everything set up, you know, and the building in which we are, starting our business has kiosks. They have kiosks surrounding the whole building so that even the gate to the premise is blocked. And for 2 years, we've not been able to operate because people are whatever and they will not move. And the system will not move them. So I'm just saying that people come here, they are so frustrated. So my question is, when you invite people to come home, is there space for them here? That's my question. Is there space for us to...
Thank you very much. It's a question of space. Yes, sir. And I do have the director of the Diaspora Relations Office on the stage, Mr. Kwesi Ababio, so he may answer some of these questions. Can I have the next question? Oh, yes? Yeah, go ahead.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah.
My name is Kudua Usuansa. I'm a parks director in the city in North Dakota. When Mr. Yofi Grant was speaking, before that, the finance minister said that we should go and read Nehemiah, that we should come and build. When President Mahama, when he became president, he went to Turkey. He met the businessmen and everybody, and they said they were going to come here. We are in 2016. They have never come here. They are not here. 2017, nobody from Turkey has come. He went there. We have had presidents that have been going to various countries with cap in hand for money. We still have what we have in Ghana right now. So if you want to think about resources, we are the resources. We have the money, we have the ideas. we can change the system. But when you were speaking, it was a model that you talked about investments in the country. We felt you could say something about the diaspora, what we can do to help the country. We didn't hear anything about it. We are going to pull punches within the United States. We know how they talk, how they behave. So we are not going to praise, worship you guys. We are going to tell you how it is. So don't be angry with us. Please don't be angry that we are arrogant or something. No. We have to pull punches so that we can put things together, so that we can make this country better. What I want to talk about is, with all the speeches that you made, nobody talked about the environment. The last questioner said something about his physio, whatever. There are a lot of kiosks around. I didn't hear anything about the environment. Accra, Ghana is so filthy. And there is money. There's money. We can employ thousands and thousands and thousands of people when it comes to the environment. And that will recycle money and the country can grow. We have the ideas, I tell you honestly. So we want you to hook up with us so that we can help this country build. So I want you to think about what is going on. Please, we are a special constituency. So we want you to be with us so that we can help this country and move the country ahead. That's what I want to say.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, sir.
Hello, my name is Philip Akungbarik. I am a certified public accountant in the United States. I have an accounting practice and providing consulting services to my clients. A lot of my clients, some of which are here, really want to invest in Ghana. A lot of them want to come back home and contribute. But once again, it's some of the frustrations that they encounter, which is why they don't do. I know what you guys are doing here is great, and that's what we're looking forward to. In most cases, Ghanaians, we like talking, we talk big, 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 but afterwards, nothing happens. When I heard about this, I didn't plan to come to Ghana. I come to Ghana almost every year. I was planning to come in September. When I hear about this, I say, you know what? Let me come and represent you guys and see what they have to say. Personally, I have interest in developing, in investing in Ghana. This one factory, district one factory concept was a laudable one. I have some guys who've been talking about investing in shea butter processing back in the north. The question I ask myself is, and I'll ask my guys, who do we need to talk to get this process started? If the government wants to help us to do it, how are we going to get that information? When I was listening to you guys, I said, you know what? I need to talk to the Association of
Ghana Industries.
So I intended to look at that. When I signed up for this program, when I registered, I put my profile. They were to link me with local partners. I got an email asking me to confirm if I'm here. I said, yes, I'm here. I'm still waiting for feedback and how we can get this started. The point is, I, as an advisor to some of my clients, I hear them all the time about what they want to do, some of the ideas they want to come to do, business plans and stuff like that. There is the need for the government, if we really want to do this, to provide enough information to make it easier for these investors to come in. Some of them may not have multi-million dollars to invest, but the little that they can do, if we can make it easier for them, I think that would be great. So it's more of a comment than a question, but specifically, I want to know what you guys are going to do to help me in particular to do some of the things that I want to do here.
All right, thank you very much. Probably I want to bring Mr. Ababio to respond, and Yofi as well. Yes. So 3 questions. First one was, is there space if you go calling people to come? Is there space for them? That's one question. Second question is the issue of not pulling any punches, saying it as it is, right, being blunt. Yes. And third, we need information to get stuff done.
Right. I mean, definitely there is space. I can tell you because I run the GIPC. But I also tell you, I mean, sometimes maybe we lean too much on the external than ourselves. And I, for one, sitting at the GIPC, I'm sometimes inundated by people who come and they believe that they have to see me when truly they didn't even need to see me, because I personally can't do much for them. All that they required is already there. And I can also tell you, there are many people who have come from the diaspora, set up their businesses, and are very successful. You know, very, very successful. Much better than, and I can tell you that in the 2000s, leading to the 2000s, a lot of transformation that took place in Ghana's financial sector was driven by people from the diaspora. They didn't go anywhere for help. It was their own grit and sheer will to succeed that drove them to succeed. So sometimes I do understand your angst, I do understand your concerns, and make it seem like there's no space for you. I can imagine. I have worked in many places in the world. I face the same problems everywhere. They are not unique to Ghana. But I think one thing that for us is important is, here is a government that is very clear that it is going to draw in the diaspora to be part of its development agenda. All I'll say is, let's do it together. It's not about pointing to guys across the bench and saying, you guys ought to do this or you guys ought to do that. We've got to do it together. We are not in a perfect system. We are striving towards that. Transition is hard. There are many things we ought to change and improve to make things work. It's not going to be perfect from first day, but we are committed to make it work. I left what I would call my very comfortable investment banking job to go into government. And I'm thrilled by it, because every day I'm seeing challenges that I can convert to opportunities and make them work. And that's what gives me the drive that I've got to do it, that I can contribute to a country changing and becoming a marvelous place. So yes, I'll appeal with you that even though you come in and you face challenges, at the end of the day, you should know that the system requires change, and you could be the change that you yourself require. You want to see some change, be the change that you want to require. Be an instrument of change, and you see a lot more progress. The other question was on the environment.
Yeah.
Okay. Good question. But unfortunately, this is a themed conference. And so we can't discuss everything here. Some things, and I did mention that there were some priority areas for government, for development of government. There are many, many more. There are many, many more areas where there needs to be change. But we'll focus on the theme as it is today. So sorry if we didn't speak about the environment. There are projects that deal with the environment. At least I can tell you for sure that the direction in the energy space is to go to renewable, sustainable energy. As part of it is to also take care of the environment. So sorry that we don't hear anything about it here, but it's still a major concern. And I plead with you to understand that there are many things that a government looks at. Many, 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 many. You can't, in one platform, go through the whole list of them, but I can tell you the intention is real. This time, the intention is real and it's serious. That was the last question. Sorry, I have to rely on him for the questions.
Okay, so there's a third one. It had to do with, there was one person who was saying it felt that the diaspora was not being privileged. It was just foreign direct investment. And
oh, I am not sure that is correct. Throughout my presentation, I kept highlighting how critical it was to engage with the diaspora. And I did mention that they represent a significant amount of capital, both human and financial. Didn't I? Yeah, I did say that. So I don't think it's right to say that government is not looking at it. The reason why we are here, and the reason for this conference, and the Secretary to speak about it, is to draw you in, start the engagement, and let's see how best we can focus on deliverables and go through to it. I think the opportunities are there, and you should look at them as opportunities. You can see, like they always say, the glass is either half full or half empty. Me personally, I always take every challenge as an opportunity to bring about change or improve upon myself to deliver. So, yes, we do agree. There are many things to do. I think this is a step in the a bold step in the right direction, that government wants to engage the diaspora. And that is a policy, to the extent that there's an office of the diaspora in the Flagstaff House. So if anybody says that the diaspora is not being engaged, it's either because you haven't really gotten the information, or... And the last thing I'll say is, I've always been in private sector. This is my first engagement in government. The reason why I decided to go into politics and get into government was one day I woke up and my daughter looked at me and says, "You're always complaining about this, you're always complaining about that, you're always complaining about this. Why don't you get up and do something about it?" And so I took the bold step. I says, okay, if I think I'm smart enough, I'll put myself out there and try and push for what I believed in to get into office so that we can do something about the things that we always disagree with and think are bad, are not good, and stop complaining. Now I listen. I go back. If I can get somebody who can do it, I get it. If I can do it myself, I do it. But I listen because that's my job, and solve the problem. So if you feel very committed, I'll challenge you and urge you and encourage you. Be part of the solution. Work to be part of the solution. I agree we all can't be politicians, but we can all be part of the solution. Thank you. I think he has it.
Thank you very much.
Hello. Thanks. I'm just here to add a little voice to what some of the concerns that have been expressed. And I'd like to take it up by first dealing with the issue of space. And just to perhaps say something on space, I would like to know if any of you has experienced going on the trotro in this country before. There's something we call achiaya. As soon as the trotro breaks, it pushes everyone forward, and there's always space for another passenger. There's always space for any of us if we are willing and we are very determined to get on board. I say this not to disrespect the fact that, yes, we are genuinely asking if there is enough space to accommodate us. But if you go by the examples that we already have, I would also say that, you never hear about the good news, but you always hear about the bad news. And in that vein, I would say there have been so many ventures by people from the diaspora who have come in and have been successful. The other day I was going around in the course of, looking for funding with everything towards this project. And a lady told me, she said she is married to a Ghanaian from America. And at some point, she told the husband, "I'm going to Ghana to live in Ghana. If you are not coming, me, I'm going." And lo and behold, she came. And since then, if I should mention the name of the company and the success that, they've chalked, you would be surprised. It's Avis Car Hire. They are so successful. They are doing so well. So there are so many examples that we can pick up to run with. Perhaps that's enough for space. And then on the issue of, I think it was to do with the themed, as Yofi Grant has already said, we're not going to be dealing with everything because, it is a themed summit. So based on the theme and on a day, something will be discussed and hopefully we will exhaust it. I also want to briefly touch on the issue about the ministers not being available. I don't agree with you that perhaps in my case, I even wanted ministers to be available. I'm happy with these guys here because they have done it. They are in business. We are not saying that we don't want the ministers to come. Let me tell you, precisely the reason why my office is relevant is that it is the conduit through which we channel our grievances, our issues, all the things that we want to deal with to the government. And those who have had the benefit of dealing with the office in this short time that we've been there would bear testimony. I think the gentleman himself has been there. We've had a lively exchange. He was quite happy at the end of the day, if I'm right, that we are dealing with issues. Essentially, the office is there to facilitate whatever your issues are, whatever the business plans you have, who you want to see, how you want to get things done. And we have been helping people within this short space of time. And I only wish that we have some examples here to somebody would be able to bear with me here, to witness to this. Not recently, there was a gentleman who came in with a business plan. He didn't have any clue what to do, but he wanted to be part of that
process of what? Winning the one district, one factory. I can assure you that as I speak, this gentleman is one of those people in the pole positions from Germany, virtually with no business plan. But we gave him good enough advice. And some of the advice could be as something that you wouldn't consider as, okay, you know you are going into this district. You know this is what is there. You know these are the people there. These are the key influential people in that, society, in that district. Have you got them all on board? Can you do this? Can you do this? And you'll be amazed at what this guy has been able to do within a short time. So that we are there to facilitate. The Diaspora Relations Office is there to help you. I know you have so many issues, but please, there is an arm of government that is there, set up purposely for you to enable us to engage and to translate all your concerns to government. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kwesiwa Ababio. Let's put our hands together for the other speakers as well. Mr. Yofi Grant, as well as Mr. James Asari Ejay, and Mr. Philip Soa, as well as Rahul Gopinath. Thank you very much for your contributions. You may exit the stage now. Thank you. And I'm about to be the most unpopular man in this room because I wasn't taking any more questions, but I've released them to you so you can see them and ask them the questions that you have. We have a new session coming up. We have the Minister for Trade and Industry who will be on the stage in 3 minutes. And I just want to let you know that this event is a networking event, and as this session was going on, we were able to connect a potential investor with somebody from the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection, and there's a deal that is being formed as we speak here. So that's what it's all about. It's about connecting, it's about making those links so that we can bring our ideas to bear on the things that we want to do. Thank you very much. The next session starts in a couple of minutes, but let me remind you of some workshops that will be happening after this particular session. Please wait a minute, wait a few, don't please kindly stay because the minister is coming with his presentation. For those of you who registered and haven't gotten your pictures, the registration point is at the top of this room on the left, and you can have your registration completed in this room without stepping out. Top of the room towards the left, you see the ladies who have set up a desk there, and they will help you to get your registration sorted out. The next presentation is by the Honorable Minister for Trade and Industry, Alan Chimating, who will be looking at the role of the ministry in coordinating the growth agenda. We also have a presentation from Mr. David Ufusu-Dorte, AB, and David, who is looking at policy and legal considerations in investing in the country, as well as a presentation from Mr. Jabanona, partner Ernst & Young, Ghana, looking at startups, peaks and troughs. So thank you very much. It will start in a couple of minutes, 5 minutes or so. We'll start with a new presentation. Thank you. But this is not mine. We have a couple of workshops starting in 45 minutes or in 30 minutes or so. The One District, One Factory workshop is in Committee Hall 2 at 5:20 towards the right. In the main hall, we'll also have a presentation which is on the investor experience that will happen here at 5:20. And then on the left, when you step out on the left, there will be a workshop on importation of goods. So those of you who are talking about importation, that's in meeting room 2. And then in meeting room 1, also on the left, we'll be looking at the Diaspora and the Oil Discovery Committee Hall 1. So that's what we have ahead for you at 5:20. Right after the presentations at 5:20, there will be a couple of workshops, one-on-one interactions in the committee halls and in this room as well. Thank you.
Time to come home. Time to come home. Time to come home. Time to come home, my brother. Come back. Oh, my sister. Come back. Come on, come back, my brother. There's our homeland, we we are bold and strong. See, the land is full of riches and men who are strong. Ghana is calling you home. Come back to Ghana, come back home. From the European Union to USA, Ghana is calling. From Australia to UK, Ghana is calling. Oh, come back home, Sito. Come back home, Sito. Time to come home. Time to come home. Time to come home. Time to come home, my brother. Hey, my sister. Ghana's calling you, she calling me. Mother Ghana's calling us to come back home. Ghana is calling you, she calling me. Motherland is calling us to come back home. Come back home, home, come back home. Hey. Come back home, home, come back home. Hey. Time to come home, time to come home, time to come home, time to come home, my brother. Come back home, hey, my sister. Hey. Come on, my brother. Come back home, my sister. Come back home. Come back home.
Lot of opportunities.
Come back. Come on, come back home. Ghana's calling from diaspora. Come back, my sister. Come, my brother. Come back home.
Thank you very much. God bless you all. God bless Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tuga. The message is still ringing in my head. It's now time for us to listen to the words of our keynote speaker. Kindly rise to your feet as we welcome the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo.
contribution of overseas Ghanaians to the development of Ghana as important. The taxes that you pay, of course, for example, when you ship things home, form a big part of government revenue. In 2016, you remitted home some $2 billion United States dollars. Your contributions in retail, tourism, information and communications technology, second-hand vehicles, spare parts, and textile industries, and in the development of our oil and gas industry are remarkable. This is why accountability by government should extend to you as well, and not just to the people living within the geographical territory of Ghana. It is for this reason that in the MPP's 2016 manifesto, we stated clearly that if the Ghanaian people repose their confidence in us and confer the mandate of leadership of this potentially great country on my modest person, my government, quote, shall expand further the opportunities that will allow Ghanaians living abroad to participate fully in our national discourse and benefit fully from the opportunities this nation has to offer, unquote. In the holding of this summit, I believe we can all agree that government has taken a bold step towards the fulfillment of this promise. Let me do a quick recall of the diaspora-specific promises outlined in our 2016 manifesto. We pledged, amongst others, to 1, put in place a policy framework that would encourage Ghanaians who may or not have acquired other citizenships to bring their skills back home to assist in the development of our country. Secondly, expand further the opportunities that will allow Ghanaians living abroad to participate fully in our national discourse and benefit fully from the opportunities this nation has to offer. Thirdly, help in the implementation of the Representation of the People's Law 1992, PNDCL 284, as amended, alias ROPAL. And 4, move the Diaspora Affairs Bureau from the Foreign Ministry to the Office of the President to coordinate more effectively all matters affecting Ghanaians overseas. I do not want to sound like a broken record, but on occasions such as this, it is worth repeating that on 7th January 2017, I inherited an economy confronted with significant challenges. 73% debt to GDP ratio, a fiscal deficit of 9%, 2.4 billion United States dollars debt overhang in the energy sector, a growth rate of 3.6% in 2016, the lowest in the last 23 years, erratic power supply, declining agricultural and industrial growth rates, high production and operating costs, high lending and inflation rates, widespread unemployment, and widespread corruption. That is why the people of Ghana voted emphatically for change, and that is why I am here today as President of the Republic. The conditions in our country demand the government machinery functions efficiently and at full force, and that nothing is left on autopilot. The conditions demand that all of us, each and every one of us, in and out of Ghana, play a significant role in helping to put our country and its economy on the path of progress and prosperity. You, better than anyone gathered here, know that the key programs and policies that have allowed the economies of Europe, Asia, and the Americas to develop so spectacularly have been 1, the modernization of their agriculture, 2, the development of their industrial base, and 3, the reordering of their financial sectors to support growth in agriculture and growth in manufacturing and industry. On the contrary, our economy over the years has been largely dependent on the production and export of raw materials, which you and I both know cannot and will not create the high numbers of good-paying jobs for the masses of our people. It is for this reason that I have put before the Ghanaian people the most ambitious program of social and economic transformation of any government in the history of the Republic. This program aims at stimulating growth in the private sector so that it can create jobs. A monetary policy that is stabilizing the currency and reducing significantly the cost of borrowing. The introduction of a raft of taxes aimed at helping pay relief and encouraging growth. These interventions are lowering the cost of doing business, shifting the focus of our economy from taxation to production. These measures have been put in place to build the most business-friendly economy in Africa, which will create jobs and prosperity for all the world. It will drive investment, domestic and foreign, into Ghana and present you, our overseas Ghanaians, with the opportunity to bring your wealth of knowledge and expertise to the fore in the development of Ghana. I encourage the growing number of Ghanaian entrepreneurs abroad to take advantage of this and extend the benefits of their education, professional skills, contacts and ability to the advancement of Ghana. Today, the transnational nature of digital technology allows you to act productive as citizens around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, to show our commitment to overseas Ghanaians, the NPP government, under the leadership of the outstanding Ghanaian statesman, former President, Excellency General Zulu, passed in 2005 representation of the People's Amendment Law, whose aim was to allow overseas Ghanaians to vote in Ghanaian elections. To date, that law has not been implemented. I remember the then chairperson of the Electoral Commission, my former governor back at the University of Ghana, Dr. Kojo Afon, indicating to Ghanaians that the Electoral Commission was not ready, but neither was it properly equipped to implement this. Indeed, the National Democratic Congress
export earnings. And so we have identified a number of new growth poles that should lead our country in the next 50 years. And these strategic anchor industries include the following. One, we are going to develop an integrated aluminum industry. We have significant deposits of bauxite. I think you all know about Nehin, you know about Chebi. If you put a value on our bauxite deposits, you are looking at an estimated value of over 460 billion US dollars, just these two sites. So it means that we are actually sitting on wealth. But instead of continuing to ship our bauxite without adding value, this time we'll go through the entire value chain from bauxite to alumina. And I'm sure most of you are aware that we have a smelter, an aluminum smelter, Valco. And we go through the smelting process to generate aluminum ingots, which then becomes the basis of developing a new aluminum downstream industry. And I think you all know what aluminum does. From aircraft parts to packaging plants
to construction facilities, all using aluminum. I think aluminum is the metal of the world now. And so this time, we are going to go beyond just shipping our bauxite without adding value. We are also going to develop our iron and steel deposits. Iron, I think iron ore, most of you are aware that it has not been exploited, not even to the extent of shipping it iron ore raw. That has not even been touched. And interestingly, we have something which many countries that have iron ore deposits do not have, which is manganese. And it is the combination of manganese and iron ore that gives us steel. And so again, for the first time in our history, we are going to develop our iron and steel industry and produce steel in this country. Now, if you have steel and you have aluminum, that is the basis of a very vibrant construction industry. Now, beyond that, we also have now discovered significant quantities of oil and gas. Are we going to follow the same path that other African countries have followed and not been able to add value to their oil and gas resources? Obviously, the answer is no. So we are now also going to develop a very vibrant petrochemical industry using our oil and gas resource. So you know what I'm talking about. From the production of fertilizers, bitumen, plastics. I mean, the value of the downstream industry in petrochemicals is over 50 times what you can get from just exporting oil and gas, you know. And, I mean, basically, the evidence is there. So that's the other anchor industry. The other one is the pharmaceutical industry. And we are priming ourselves to become the pharmaceutical hub, manufacturing hub in West Africa. Already we have a few companies that are manufacturing pharmaceutical products, but we want to create a hub in Ghana. Beyond that also, we have the capacity to mine almost 3 million tons of industrial salt per annum. And along the whole of the West Coast, it is only Senegal and Ghana that has industrial salt deposits. And many of you may not be aware of this. We are not talking about table salt. We are talking about industrial salt, which in itself is also a component for processing petroleum products. And so this time, we are going to make sure that we mine our industrial salt deposits, and that is going to start a new chemical industry. And those of you who come from the United States, you know how strong the Dow Chemical and all these chemical companies are. Because once you produce industrial salt, then you enter into all the chloralkaline industries. Over 200 different products that you can generate just from the industrial salt deposit. Beyond that also, those of you who had not traveled outside our country in the 70s, you'll recall that we had an emerging automobile and vehicle assembly industry. In the late 70s, Ghana was assembling already buses, new plant buses, under license from Germany, MAN Diesel. We even were producing Buafo mini trucks. So why have we gone back so far and allowed other countries now to develop a capacity in vehicle automobile assembly? I recall that around the same time in the 70s, Japan had also emerged, you know, as a country that was getting into the automobile industry. But even at that time, nobody would touch a Japanese car. But now, Japan is leading the world in automobile assembly. And why do we feel that we cannot, if in the 70s we were able to assemble cars, now we'll be able to go beyond that. So that's the other thing that we're going to do. And then beyond that, again, those of you in Europe, those of you also in the United States, you know that the retail market value for garments and textiles alone is billions of dollars. And we have an opportunity to export duty-free, quota-free garments and textiles. You have all these countries that have put their labels on the US and European markets. And we have fantastic operators, tailors, seamstresses who have the capacity to be able to do garment production. The only challenge is that we have to move into mass production. And so garment and textiles is the other anchor industry. I could go on and on, but I want you, my brothers and sisters, to understand that we are on the threshold of a very significant program for industrial transformation with all these strategic anchor initiatives. Now, the other pillar of our transformation agenda is to establish at least one industrial park in all our 10 regions. Again, the magic of Asia, the magic of China, it's all about industrial parks and special economic zones. And so again, we are going to make sure that in every region that we establish, together with the private sector, an industrial park which provides access to land, reliable energy supply, all the utilities that you require for industrialization. Try and read up on what is happening in Ethiopia, which has just started their own program for industrial parks. And maybe you would agree with me that this is the path for us to follow. But if we are going to talk about industrial transformation, enhancing industrial production, then we need to have the capacity to be able to market and sell these products. And that is why our next pillar of our transformation agenda is to embark on an aggressive export promotion drive. And I believe that you're all aware that we have market access opportunities in the US market under the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act. We haven't been able to make use of it. We have access to the European market, duty-free, quota-free, under what is called the Economic Partnership Agreement. We have ECOWAS, over 300 million population just around us. And we have not been able to tap into the ECOWAS market. And even more interestingly, for the first time in the history of our continent, by the end of 2017, Africa is going to become one common market. That's a free trade zone. And so we are going to have a continental free trade area for Africa. So it means that if you are serious about industrial production and manufacturing, and you locate a plant in Ghana, you can target not only the ECOWAS market, you can export duty-free, quota-free to the whole of the African continent. And that's a significant opportunity for us. The next pillar is, of course, whilst it is useful for us to look at exports, we also have to be able to sell some of the things that we are going to manufacture on our domestic market. So the other pillar of our agenda is to develop and modernize our domestic retail market infrastructure. And I hope some of you will take the opportunity to visit some of our shopping malls. But we are not talking only about shopping malls. We are going down to the district level also to ensure that each district has modern domestic retail market infrastructure. Now, we're looking at developing companies, large, small, and medium. So the other pillar of our transformation agenda is not just to focus on large companies, but also to develop our small and medium enterprises. And for the first time, try and help our informal sector to grow to become formalized small and medium enterprise. I'm not aware of any country that has achieved superlative growth on the back of an informal sector. And that is our agenda, to graduate these companies into the more formal sector. So that's on SME development. Now, when you have large companies and you have small companies, there has to be a mechanism for linking them. The whole economy of Japan is based on subcontracting. Small companies producing for large companies. And so the other pillar of our agenda is to set up what we call the Industrial Subcontracting Exchange, which will formally link SMEs with large-scale companies. Now, all this, I'm sure, sounds very good, but then we need an enabling environment which will convince you to put your dollar in this economy. And that is why we are also embarking on a very aggressive program of business regulatory reform. Most of you are aware of the World Bank Doing Business Index. Currently, we are ranked 108 on the Doing Business Ranking Index. I'm sure somebody might have mentioned it to you. Our reform measures that we are implementing now, I can assure you within the next 3 years, will bring us to #1 in Africa, ahead of Mauritius. And last but not the least is we are a private sector driven government. And so we want to have constant and regular interaction with the private sector. So we are going to set up this public-private sector dialogue mechanism to ensure that we are always interacting with the private sector. And we will make sure that every year there's a presidential business summit, which is a formal mechanism, a platform for government to commit ourselves to do specific things on behalf of the private sector, identifying key performance indicators, KPIs, which the private sector can use to measure our own performance in supporting them. Ladies and gentlemen, if there was ever a time in this country where I believe as a diasporan you can make a conscious strategic decision to come to Ghana and invest, this is the time. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, the Honorable Minister for Trade and Industry, Mr. Alan Kyerematen. Our next presentation is going to be delivered by a partner at Ernst & Young Ghana. Let's welcome Mr. Jabano Na.
Honorable Minister, distinguished diasporans, I'd like to start by saying that I'm actually a diasporan myself. I stayed abroad for about 10 years, and I've been in Ghana for the last 20 years, and I'm still adjusting. The short presentation I'm going to give to you today is really based upon practical experience that I've experienced myself, as well as advice we've given to, I guess, some of the people here today. And we are really going to be focusing on the perspective of people who are interested in small and medium type of businesses. Large-scale businesses have their own challenges, but there are peculiar challenges related to small and medium-scale businesses. First and foremost, when any of my colleagues or friends give me advice, staying either in the UK or US, I want to come back to Ghana to set up, ask them, you at least need about 18 months to 2 years to adjust. You need to have a house, you need to have a good, decent form of transport, and a few basic things. If you happen to be keeping 2 homes, then you need to ensure that you have enough funds to maintain a home abroad and to maintain a home in Ghana. Because things in Ghana sometimes do take time. It takes time, and the other key thing that you get to learn over time as well, it takes a network. Almost everything that you try and achieve in Ghana is easier and simpler and much more effective if you have a network and you have good advice. It applies for your personal life in Ghana as well as applies when you're trying to establish especially a small and medium scale business in Ghana. So the first thing obviously, is to try and think of what is the business concept? What do you want to set up in Ghana? You might be already providing some services abroad that you want to come and set up here, or you might come and visit and find out what you think your resources and skills and contacts might enable you to do. And there are a number of rules of the road for doing that. Some, for example, are to do with listening to policies which have been presented and figuring out which of those policies are best suited to some of the skills that you might have. But you don't just stop there. Behind each policy, there are opportunities which are specific. So let me give you an example. A few years back, because of the introduction of Ghana's oil find, clearly the oil and gas sector is a huge area, but it's also an area which requires huge investment and huge technical expertise. So a local content law was passed, and within that local content law, there are about 10 areas, 10 main categories, which have been set aside for all these big players to transfer to Ghanaians or Ghanaians from the diaspora over a period of 10 years. Okay. These 10 areas, there are some which require significant capital, there are some which require certain type of expertise, and some which require partnerships. And these large organizations are required to transfer to Ghanaians over a specific period of time. So sometimes when people come to us and ask us what they want to achieve, especially in this area, we go through the policy with them, we go through the specifics with them, and we pick out those areas and ideas that might be suitable for them. Likewise, the government has also come up with a policy of private-public partnerships. The gentleman sitting down on the left is one of Ghana's foremost legal experts and also PPP specialists. There's a significant opportunity for organizations to participate with governments to implement certain projects, but it's a minefield. So you need to have people who can give you an indication of what is required. So I guess what I'm saying is that identify some of those policies, figure out what you think might be suitable for you, then home in on your efforts. The second thing is really about networks. If you're fortunate enough, based on the schools that you went to or your family, you have access to trusted advisors, fine. If not, we really encourage some of the folks who come and see us to engage or participate in a number of the professional organizations, such as the AGI. Almost every sector in Ghana has got a professional organization, and there you have access to people who have done similar things to what you're trying to achieve, or obviously have walked that road and can provide you deep insights into what you're trying to achieve. We really encourage people, but before you set out, try and go to some of those entities and gain first-hand advice. Crucial and important. The third thing is access to data. Yes, a lot of people say that it's difficult to get data in Ghana, but there are sources. Once you decide on an area, there are potential areas of getting data. So one example is the Ghana Statistical Service conducts a living standard survey once every 4 to 6 years and provides quite rich information about statistics and data which could potentially be relevant to you in the different sectors that you might be participating in. So that is certainly a useful source of data. And there are obviously other sector-specific data. So once you participate in some of these professional organizations, you certainly gain access to some of this data, which can be very useful. The fourth area, especially startups, and has been increasing over the years in Ghana, is the number of incubators, accelerators, and startups in a number of areas. Some for climate and innovation, others for obviously oil and gas, others for technology, others for financial services, and the like. The slides have now come up. And in those areas, you can certainly gain a lot of information. Whoever's controlling the slides, can you go up a second? Go up. Policy enablers. Go to the next slide. Go to the next slide. I just want to give you an example of the oil and gas example I was talking about. Go to the next slide. The next slide. Keep going, keep going. The slide after this. Okay. So, for example, this focuses on the local content opportunities in Ghana. There are 10 areas representing by those 10 bubbles. The larger the bubble, the bigger the opportunity. The color red means that in Ghana at the moment, we don't have local capacity. So where it's big, where it's red, there's significant opportunity for people who have expertise in that area to play with. Where it's small and green, that means there's a relatively higher capacity here. So the key point of this information is that there are certain areas in Ghana where we lack the local capacity and resource. And there are significant opportunities from folks from the diaspora who might have partnerships that can enable them tap the opportunities into some of those areas. And this information is out there. It's up to you to go to the right organizations, the right professional associations to get this information to focus your mind. And this information is out there. Clearly, whatever business you're going to focus on is all about your expertise, your resources, time to market, and the most crucial thing is the network of support. You really, really need to have a network of support that can enable you along the way. And that network will enable you, keep going, to address the practical challenges of doing business in Ghana. Registering a business, as some of you might know, if you don't have a trusted advisor, could be quite an arduous task. Because the challenge in Ghana is sometimes that you might have the resources, but you might not have the time. Okay, registering your business, registering your property, trying to get credits. And another critical one is establishing and enforcing contracts. So just give you a brief example. I set up a business about 15, 18 years ago with some very good friends of mine. The business went fairly well, but I did it with friends. We didn't have a formal contract in place. And it got to a certain point in the business, we had both made different assumptions of a very thriving business. And fortunately, we had a mutual friend who was a lawyer who would enable us to go back and put in place a contract which enabled us to manage our affairs. So in Ghana as well, it's crucially important to ensure that you've got effective contracts in place. And because of rule of law in Ghana, you can actually enforce them. But you need to have that effective contract in place in the first place. And we always encourage people to get the best lawyer you can afford. Not just any lawyer, the best lawyer you can afford. Because trust me, it really will make a difference once your business thrives or indeed when you have challenges. Then, whatever business you are starting, especially a startup, you really need to understand the labor regulations. You might have experiences elsewhere, but there are some nuances about the labor regulations in Ghana. Yet again, your trusted advisor can help you address them. And that can really make all the difference in the type of business that you have and how you run it. And there are practical ways of doing that. Time and money, mentioned that already, is really, those are the two things to focus on. You might have the cash, but you don't have the network, you don't have the time, because things take a while and you need to plan and budget for that. In Ghana, there's a startup ecosystem. It's maturing. It starts off with, there are a lot of information providers who can certainly provide you all the information that you need. You also have professional associations, which I talked about. You have government and government policies. There's a lot of assistance you can certainly get from the Ministry of Trade, all the initiatives that are being promoted as well. There are certainly a lot of financial institutions, a lot of new ones, and more importantly now, because of the new pension laws, the pension funds themselves have cash to invest in businesses, and they're providing an alternative source of medium to long-term funds as well. So the ecosystem is there, it's maturing, and it's up to us, those diasporans who are here, to find out about it and take advantage of it. I'll just go into some detail on some of them. We've talked about information sources already. There are a number of them, a number of trade and professional associations, and we really, really encourage you to use them. There are also a lot of award programs going on. And those award shows also provide an opportunity for you to meet successful entrepreneurs in the space that you want to participate in. And we encourage you to do that. And certainly, a key enabler for a lot of SMEs that we provide advisory services to. Data sources. There's a lot of data out there from Ghana Living Standard Survey. Let's go to the next slide. I'm just telling you about the sources. The National Communication Authority, depending on what industry you're in, there's a lot of rich data out there if you go and ask for it and you have the time to wait. There's also an integrated business establishment survey, which has a lot of rich information about industry. So this one district, one factory that the Honorable Minister just talked about, there's a lot of information out there which can give you a good basis of doing your work. Investment incentives. Clearly, as a country, there are a lot of investment incentives. Go to the next slide. And those investment incentives, you have the usual ones for VAT and tax. And the critical thing is that there have been a lot of changes by the new government. So it's important to understand them to figure out how you can take advantage of them. So that's number one. Let's go to the next slide. The Ghana Investment Promotion Center, as you'll probably be aware, has a lot of incentives. But the key thing there is that some of those incentives are not automatic. You have to apply for them. Some of them might require parliamentary approval. So you have to go through a process. First is getting the information, understanding them, speak to people who have taken advantage of them, then present your story. Then there are also industry-specific incentives. Some are locational, some are for agric. Those of you interested in agriculture, there's a huge benefit in terms of a huge reduction in the tax rate. Likewise for cocoa processing, rural banking, waste processing, and a number of other things. But they are over a concessionary period. So you need to understand them, you need to figure out how to take advantage of them and to your best interest. There are also other incentives to do with location, especially in the manufacturing space. So one district, one factory, for example, if you locate your factory out of Accra, out of a regional capital, if you're doing a district rural area, there are significantly more advantages to take advantage of. But you also need to bear in mind the potential high costs. So it's a trade-off, but you need to get that information and take advantage of it. Likewise, a lot of opportunities in terms of exemption for VAT, depending on what sector. This is just to give you some of them: educational services, laboratory, cattle, water, and the like. So all these incentives are actually out there. The Free Zones Act, some of you might certainly be aware of that. If you have products that are relevant to the ECOWAS region, certainly Ghana is the place to be, but you should be in a position to export 70% of those items out of Ghana and the other 30% here, and just certain incentives that you can take advantage of. As I indicated earlier, there are a number of incubators and accelerators that help you set up. Funding, the next slide, funding is always a challenge, but increasingly, there are a lot of different sources of funding. You start off, obviously, when you get the concept based on your own, maybe personal funds from family and friends, but in Ghana today, you have other sources of funds from seed capital, angel investments, right through to grants, banks, then obviously the stock exchange. Even the stock exchange as well has a specific offering for SMEs as well. So there are a number of possibilities that were not available in the country some time back, but they are available today for SMEs to take advantage of. There are also a number of actors who are out there to help small and medium-scale investors. So if you take the Invest in Africa intervention, for example, it pulls together small businesses with large-scale organizations. They have a portal, and the portal basically has the purchasing power of about 20 or 30 large corporates in Ghana, and they buy through the portal. So what happens is that the SME has to register, go online, gets an opportunity to participate, and this has obviously been expanded. The Climate Innovation Center, for example, is a consortium with a SHESI, SNV, a UN institution, and Ernst & Young to support folks who have got green initiatives. And what the Climate Innovation Center essentially provides, it provides you with knowledge, it provides you with support, incubation opportunities, and supports you through the funding phase as well, and through the growth phases as well. So there are a lot of other entities. InnoHub is a new entity that is also doing significantly well in that area. The funding sources are also out there. This happens to be, obviously you may see that at all. For specialist areas, there are different funding sources, grants, debt, equity, based upon specific criteria, both within Ghana or also outside Ghana, who are specifically set up to support projects and opportunities in country. So you might be based out of Ghana, but the head office of that funding agency might happen to be in your location, but very interested in investing in Ghana, and you can take advantage of that as well. So essentially, the ecosystem for startups is there, but the key message is really establishing a good network. If you don't have a personal network, then the best way of going about that is to engage key people through professional organizations and trusted advisors. Thank you very much.
So the key word there is the network. Thank you very much, Mr. Jabano Na, partner at Ernst & Young Ghana. The last presentation in this session, by the way, will be given by Mr. David Ofosu Dorte, AB and David. And let me make a quick announcement here. For those of you who are interested in everything to do with importation and the port of Tema, we do have a director, person responsible for that particular port, who will be here, so you can keep your questions and then drop them onto him. And I'll make a few announcements concerning the workshops right after this session. So the One District, One Factory workshop will be at Committee Hall 2 when you step out on the right. The Diaspora and the Oil Discovery workshop will be in Committee Hall 1 when you step out here on the left. The workshop on importation of goods is on meeting room 2. It's in meeting room 2, also on the left. And there will be an investor experience workshop right here in this main hall. So that will be happening after the last presentation. All right, so now I'll cede the floor to Mr. David Ofosu Dorte of AB and David.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I understand I have some few minutes, so let's go straight to the point. If you came to Ghana as a diasporan and you wanted to invest in hello? Okay, and you wanted to just go and do investment in a company that takes direct contracts from the public sector. So for example, you wanted to be a contractor, you do not, this presentation is not themed for you. Neither is it for persons who are, for example, deciding to set up their own business and do not have any, envisage any partnership with government. So PPPs deal with the situations where private sector person first and foremost want to perform an otherwise public sector function. It's taking significant risk from the government. And thirdly, is entering into a long-term contract with the government. So that's what this session is going to deal with. And I want us to understand that in that context. Now, all over Africa, everyone is seeking for some fair amount of money to be able to invest, especially the infrastructure. Studies upon studies have confirmed that there is about $93 billion needed per annum in order to fill the infrastructure gap for Africa. And I'm dealing with infrastructure alone at this stage, which covers about 95% or so of all PPPs. Having said that, Nigeria's component of that is estimated to be about $33 billion, and Ghana's components are estimated to be about $1.5 billion per annum. And all these countries you see on the board are all looking for that money. Now, government purse is not enough to meet that expenditure. So clearly, they need to fill this infrastructure gap to provide power, water, transportation, industrial parks, etc., which have been talked about here. And social infrastructure, which will include hospitals. So if you wanted to, for example, turn Kwalebu to become a health tourism center, the government doesn't have enough money to meet all these demands. So as a result, the government turns to the private sector. And this is all across Africa and the rest of the world. not only in Ghana for that matter, and that's what PPPs is about. These things result because the public has some fair amount of expectation in what they are looking for. And I want to set the context very right so that we understand what PPPs is, and if you are trying to invest in that sector, you know what it entails regarding our procedures in Ghana. Now, the public has high expectations, and some of the expectations come from the fact that they do pay taxes, and they are expecting that their taxes will be used to develop, for example, roads for them. But if you take a country like Ghana, where about 70% of our taxes go into pay salaries and then to pay interest on loans, then you have a situation where the amount left for capital development is next to nothing. So as a result, private sector provision of roads, for example, based upon which the road will be tolled and the private sector will get the money back, becomes the reason why you have PPPs and such other strategies that enable the private sector play a role in such otherwise public sector function. But the moment you talk about that, you see that there is a challenge where private sector is looking for profit, whilst the public sector is looking to protect public interest. And also because there is a wider public scrutiny in everything you do in PPP. So you see that anytime somebody gets a PPP contract, there's quite a lot of public eye on it, and there are a lot of rumors. This person got this contract because he had this connection with this government or this minister. This person is a relative of this person, etc. They occur in a lot of these PPP contracts. And PPPs are nothing new. The names appear to be new, but they are nothing new. If you look at the Valco establishment and the Akosombo Dam as structured, it is a PPP in its real sense in every way, where Kaiser developed the Akosombo Dam in exchange for managing the power plant over a concession period where you were selling power to them at 3 cents per kilowatt hour for about a period of 30 years. And they did not take the bauxite from Ghana, but they were taking it from Jamaica in order to use the alumina to be used for a smelter in Valco. So that is not anything new. And indeed, the Suez Canal itself, way back in 1894, was built through PPPs, except that over the period, the names have been changing over time. UK gave it a different name. Over a period, they call it PFIs. Over a period, PPPs have become the most dominant way to call it. So that's what we are talking about, a venture between the private sector and the public sector, with the private sector assuming public sector responsibilities over a significant period of time over an agreement. Now, before I move on into PPPs further, it's important I emphasize again that this is different from the way traditional construction, for example, is done, where there is an employer, being the government, who simply engages a contractor and or an architect or an engineer who designs a project, and then it is paid for. Because PPPs involves two parties, one utilizing his private sector resources to do an otherwise public sector function, it thrives on a number of things. And 4 things are quite important. One is the fact that there ought to be access to capital, and this capital will invariably come from the private sector. The other one is the need for an institutional framework, which I will deal with shortly. Then political will. Now, political will is very important. And PPPs, again, in Ghana, the first time we decided to structure PPPs in its current form was in 2004, actually, when the UNDP helped the government of Ghana to prepare what was then called the PPP guidelines. I happen to have been the project manager for that project. However, the dissemination of that information wasn't wide enough. And then it went into a lull. A lot of PPP projects were done. However, they were not much, as it were, announced until sometime late in 2010, when through the World Bank, this got into vogue again. And then by June 2011, the PPP policy framework was passed. So institutional framework of some form has emerged. Then you have the need for political will and legislation. With these 4 in place, you are likely to have successful PPPs. But having said that, you will definitely come into a situation where there are a number of risks that arises. And it's important for me to illustrate this risk, because I see a lot of people who want to just enter into PPP and they have no clue that these things have risk on both parts of the divide. So let's take it that you have market risk. And I'll give just a couple of examples, because when you get a slide and you want to talk further, we can discuss it. Market risk can be a simple situation where whatever you produce is not bought. So let's take it that you invested through diaspora bond or through any other bonds. And by the way, there are a lot of these things emerging. For example, we have worked with the National Pension Regulatory Authority to make amendments in the guidelines, and to the extent that now you can have infrastructure bonds issued in Ghana. So if you're a diaspora person and you invested in an infrastructure bond, and the infrastructure bond was going to invest in, let's say, the production of water, what is the guarantee that that water is going to be bought and paid for? What if Ghana Water Company does not have the distribution network that enables the water get to the homes, or the meter that people don't pay and they are bypassing it? So the failure for that water to be bought constitutes market risk, the likelihood that you will not get the money back. Now, finance risk, again, is an example where you promised the government that you are going to deliver the project. The government promised the people, but at the end of the day, you did not get the financing. And we will say, for example, there was no financial close. What about political risk, which is what foreign investors fear most? Political risk is simply when the government decides that, I don't like your face anymore. I looked at Atu Williams and I think that I want to change this project. Yeah, Atu, I can see you over there. I want to change the project and terminate it just because it's the face of Atu Williams. It happens. In fact, I've had occasion to tell several people that at times the project termination does not even occur when governments change. It occurs when ministers change. Yes, I'm talking about ministers within the same government, because the minister wants to study all over again and he knew you were the friend of the previous minister. So some of these policy changes also occur as a result of those changes in the position of a minister. And when those things happen, at times it may lead to delay or termination of a project, and it may result in political risk. So all these risks are the reasons why you put certain structures in place when they come into PPPs. All right. Now, for the moment, in respect of the 4 key areas, you do have the situation where the policy framework has put in place mechanisms since June 3rd, 2011, and that has been the cut-off date. One is that there is a way of tracing what we call the pipeline of projects, and the pipeline starts from the National Development Planning Commission, NDPC, the ministry department and agencies, and the MMDAs. These are all ways that you can trace PPP projects, because each of these are government institutions, and if a private sector person goes there to work with them, that becomes the basis where they can do a project. Let me talk about a mega project and I'll come to a small project. A mega project for PPP, for example, will be the attempt to do the railway all the way to Paga for the sake of the iron ore deposits in Gieni, and then also connecting to Paga and the rest. So if a private sector person puts in that money in conjunction with government, that is PPP, and that's a mega project of multi-billion-dollar proportions. But I have seen PPPs which are small in nature, like somebody building bath houses for the Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly, public bath houses and public toilets. That's PPPs also. So it can come in any form, and some of these can cost as low as $5,000. Now we have got a structure where, depending on where you invest, what regulations apply to you. Okay, so that's the project gateway or the pipeline. And then there are procedures which goes from approval 1 all the way to approval 4. During question time, I can elaborate. The role of the government of Ghana, I did hear the Honorable Minister talk about the fact that the government of Ghana doesn't want to take more than 30% in projects involving the one district, one factory. In the PPP policy framework, the World Bank recommendation was that the percentage the government should take should not be more than 15 at most. But it was just a recommendation. 30% is fine. In many instances, you do not need that percentage at all. But in some projects, you do need that percentage, because when you do projects, especially those which involve the so-called OOT concept, the OOT will be either finance, own, operate, and transfer, or build, own, operate, and transfer, whatever own, operate, and transfer. Now, because at the end of the day, the project will have a reversion back to government, at times it's necessary to have the government in there so that the transition will be very smooth. So that's the part of the GOG role. Another significant part is what is called the end-user tariff. Now, the end-user tariff is a situation where the government, even though it wants this project, is also the regulator. And as diasporans, if you want to invest in this area, be very sure you check that box. It's very important. I mean, I've had occasion to represent both government and private sector side, and depending on who I'm representing, I turn the cap. That's what a lawyer is supposed to do. So, if you are representing the private sector, you have to make sure, for example, and I'm talking to private sector persons, so I'm keen to ensure I draw your attention to the fact that governments can change end-user tariff. And I'll give you a very, very simple example. We worked on a project for one of the metropolitan assemblies I will not name for the purposes of what happened, where the person did some development of markets or shopping malls, if you want to call it in the more urban name. But these were what we call markets. And in a particular election year, instructions were given that the tolls paid in the market should be divided into 2. because the MP for that area happened to be the mayor who also wanted to win the election. So the assembly went into session and passed a fee-fixing resolution and slashed the tariff into 2. What that simply means is that the investor's amortization period is going to grow longer. He's not going to get his money. It's as simple as that. So when you are dealing with a situation where government is involved, remember that government has a very long arm and can bully you. And when I talk about government, I'm not talking about NDC or MPP. I'm talking about government, including the chief directors and all the rest. And some of the decisions they take may be, detrimental to your private sector interest. So it's very important that we understand. Then we have the contingent liability where at times the project fails and then there's a recourse to government and then there's a debt to GDP ratio and all those things we talked about. There is, of course, the proposed government support, which is the project development facility. The whole idea is to help projects be developed. Then there is the viability gap scheme, which has not yet been set up to the best of my knowledge. And then there is what was originally called the Infrastructure Investment Fund, which has now taking the form of the Ghana Investment Infrastructure Fund. PPPs by their nature are very agreement intensive. It is not the type of thing you can do, as somebody indicated, with a friend and say that, business way. No. You can't do PPP without agreements and documentation. It's totally out of the question. And if you take a typical PPP as an example, depending on how complex it is, the agreements will be as complex as this. If it is a simple project which is involving a public bathroom, it will be a very simple 2-party agreement, like a normal agreement, and that is it. But here, if, for example, you are doing a power plant, somebody will be a regulator who is PURC, will be publishing tariffs. Somebody will be a transmitter, which is GridCo. Somebody will be generating. There will be agreements. There will be a lender, and the lenders may want to take direct agreements with the government so that they come back to the government. There will be what we call PCOAs, all those kind of things. So depending on, the more costly it is, the more complex and agreement intensive it becomes. In respect of the institutional framework, as I said, the policy has been enforced since 3rd June 2011, and it is being enforced to the best of my knowledge. There is, however, also the bill, which has been in Parliament for about the past 3 years. It goes in and out, in and out. Hopefully, it will be signed, it will be passed this year, all things being equal. Then there is in place what is called the PPP Approval Committee, which comprises the Minister of Finance as chair, the Chief Executive of GIPC, the Honorable Minister of Trade is also there, the Attorney General, and then the minister in whose sector the project is being done is co-opted when the project is being done. Now, depending on certain specific things, the project may go to Parliament. So, for example, if you want tax exemption, then because of the Constitution, it must go to Parliament. Or if it involves an international entity because of the Balkan case and because of the definition of international agreement, it will definitely go to Parliament. And then also, if it exceeds the equivalent of $50 million, it goes to Cabinet. So there are ranges. But again, if it is below $1 million and it's at the District Assembly, it can end at the Assembly. So it all depends on which one you are getting involved in. So, in other words, if you are doing a public bathhouse or if you are doing an assembly car park or a market, it is not likely to go beyond the District Assembly. That's how the structure is set. There are challenges. Now, the challenges include the fact that because the public is constantly paying attention to it, no matter how hard you try, you will hear people saying, is there value for money? We all talk about this value for money business. And then when it comes to value for money, there is something called value engineering, and people will be checking and benchmarking. So you need to face the fact that you will be subjected to this. Lack of access to capital, we've talked about it. Foreign exchange, I need to talk about the foreign exchange part. Because most people who do PPPs end up borrowing money from outside Ghana. That's the only reason why I want to talk about this. Because of the cost and the long term. But if you do, then remember that at the end of the day, the payback is going to be in local currency. And you have to be converting the money for that. So you have to overcome that challenge. The rest I don't think I need to mention. We can talk about it during questions time. And then also there are some things that you need to watch, especially if government says, and that's the only thing I want to talk about on this particular one, if government says they want to have the offtake obligation, what you want to check is whether or not government can fulfill the offtake obligation. What I mean by the off-take obligation is if government says that, for example, you are producing water, power, or let's say you are doing an industrial park, and government says, I'm going to pay you over a period using the District Assembly Common Fund or paying a certain amount of money into an account. The question is whether government will actually have the funds. So the good thing to do for a private sector person is to do what we call ring fencing and make sure that the money goes into a specific account. The reason is if you let the money go into the consolidated fund, which we all know is a bottomless pit, then you are not likely to get your money. Yeah, thank you. So local content and technology transfer, these are normal issues. We can deal with it during question time. Are there opportunities in this sector? Quite a lot. Transport and logistics, numerous. I mean, from rail sector to port to airports to roads, etc. So, for example, at the moment, both the Takoradi and Temamoto Way, Accra Takoradi and Temamoto Way are being studied for feasibility. Eastern Corridor of Railway studies had been done, and private sector opportunities, investment opportunities are being looked for. Energy I talked about. Tourism is one major area where PPPs occur. Even in agric, irrigation is an area, and you structure a way of paying this. Some of these are done through what we call shadow tolling, where people do not actually pay for the irrigation, but it is paid for indirectly. Again, during questions time, we can discuss that. And then social infrastructure, like for example, building a whole, somebody was trying to build a diagnostic center at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital using private sector money. So when you go to Kolebu and you do pay for your services, it ends up in the long run paying the private sector back. Because at the end of the day, if you don't take a government will never find money to do it. Another one, the much talked about one district, one factory. There are some of them which can be done in the form of PPPs. And again, during question time, I believe we can discuss it. The Honorable Minister has said a lot about it. And then again, the integrated aluminium industry. These days, I see a lot of people use this chart all around. This chart was produced way back about 2007, 2008 on a study that I was involved in. It's become quite popular these days. I see it all over the place. It's fine. Luckily, the government wants to implement it, and I'm hoping that if we can implement this for once, it will make a significant change. I've worked enough on that project to know that actually the estimate the Honorable Minister was giving is underestimated. The 460 billion is only up to the third stage. If you take aluminium and its multiplier industries from a ton of bauxite is $60. At the fourth stage, a ton of aluminium byproducts is $6,000. Now, if you take it to the fourth stage, by the values we have, we are actually $1 trillion economy. That's what it really is. But it requires a lot of private sector role in order to do it. So, hopefully, it will start one day with what we already have. Okay, I've talked about this already. And then, in the long run, there will be quite a lot of job creation in this. Just to illustrate, if you add just one more line to Valco, and you use private sector, and there are ways to do it. Again, about 3 weeks ago, I was at the Energy Forum, and I made suggestions as to how this can be done. I recognize that for Valco to function, you need to sell power at 3.5 cents per kilowatt hour. But there's a way that you can do it. We cannot do that in 15 minutes presentation. Having said that, if you did Valco alone and added one more port, the amount of potential jobs you are creating downstream is up to 48,000 jobs. That's what I'm talking about. So these things are serious things, and they are doable. And Valco is already there with installed capacity of up to 200,000 metric tons, and it can be increased to 700,000 metric tons. So that alone is enough to change the face of the economy in terms of the industrialization. So I agree more than 100% with whatever the Honorable Minister said. So, and there are PPP opportunities in all these sectors. If we were to go into the detail of this chart, for example, you will find that the production of caustic soda, chlorine, etc., fertilizer, all through the